All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about the Istio sidecar and what it actually does to your GKE cluster. And I'm not talking about theory here. We're going to look at the real, practical, nitty-gritty changes that happen the second you decide to enable that service mesh.
So think about this for a second. You're about to add just one little annotation to your namespace. Do you really know what's about to happen? Because that one line of YAML, it fundamentally rewires the DNA of every single pod you deploy there. And figuring out what that really means, well, that's exactly why we're here.
So let's start with what we all know, right? A standard GKE pod. Life is pretty simple here. You've got one container running one process, and traffic just goes straight to it. No fuss, no muss. This is our baseline, the world before the mesh.
Okay, so now let's introduce the one thing that changes all of that. And you'll see it looks so simple, but man, its effects are huge.
And here it is. This is the magic line. The moment you apply this to a namespace, something really cool happens behind the scenes. Istio has this webhook that basically watches for any new pods. And when it sees one, bam, it automatically shoves the sidecar container in there. It feels like magic for sure, but we need to understand how the trick is done.
And you can see the difference right here. Before, it was just your app container, simple. But after? Well, now your pod isn't a solo act anymore. It's a duo. You've got your application, plus its new best friend, the Istio proxy container.
So you might be asking, what's this new container for? What does it do, and how does it mess with my network traffic? Great questions. Let's pull this new pod apart and see what makes it tick.
This Istio proxy, it's actually a piece of software called Envoy, and it is incredibly powerful. Its whole job is to act like a little security guard that sits right next to your app. It intercepts every single packet of data, both coming in and going out. And that interception, that's the secret sauce. That's what lets you do all the cool service mesh stuff, like automatic encryption, fancy traffic routing, getting all those great metrics, the whole shebang.
So here's the key takeaway, right? Your app is no longer talking to the outside world directly. A request comes in, it hits the pod, but before it can get to your app, whoop, the Envoy proxy grabs it. It checks the rules, maybe encrypts some things, gathers some metrics for you, and only then does it pass the traffic over to your app on localhost. And the craziest part? Your application has no idea any of this happened. It just thinks it's getting a normal request from its own little world.
Now, all this amazing power, well, there's no such thing as a free lunch, is there? You're running a whole extra high-performance proxy inside every single one of your pods, and that is going to cost you. It costs you in CPU, and it costs you in memory.
So what's the real cost? That's the first question everyone asks, right? So let's stop talking in abstracts and put some actual numbers to this so you can see what it means for your cluster planning.
Okay, check this out. Let's say your app normally asks for 250 milliamps of CPU and 256 megs of memory. Pretty standard. Well, the Istio proxy, just by default, is going to ask for another 100 milliamps of CPU and 128 megs of RAM right on top of that. So just like that, your pod's total resource footprint just took a pretty big leap.
And when you see it as a bar chart, wow, the impact is pretty stark. I mean, just looking at memory in this example, that's a 50% increase for one pod. Now imagine you have 100 pods, or 1,000. That extra overhead really starts to add up and can have a huge impact on your overall cluster capacity.
And I need to be super clear about this. This is not a place to try and save a few bucks. You cannot under-provision the sidecar. If that Envoy proxy starts getting its CPU throttled, or worse, runs out of memory and gets own killed, it takes your application's network down with it. Your app could be running perfectly fine, totally healthy, but to the rest of the world, it's gone, completely offline.
But it's not just about resources. Oh no. There's another, much sneakier problem that bites a lot of people when they're starting out. It's a hidden race condition that happens right when your pod is starting up.
So you know how readiness probes work, right? It's just Kubernetes knocking on the door of your container saying, hey, you ready to take on some traffic? And if your container doesn't answer the door correctly a few times, Kubernetes just assumes it's broken, stops sending a traffic, and might even decide to restart the whole pod.
Okay, so here's the race. Picture this, your pod starts. Your app is a speed demon. It's up and ready in like 2 seconds flat. But the Istio proxy? It's a little slower. It needs a few more seconds to wake up, stretch, and get its configuration from the control plane. So let's say at the 6-second mark, Kubernetes sends that readiness probe. Remember, that probe has to go through the proxy to get to your app. But the proxy isn't ready yet, so the probe just fails. It hits a wall. And the critical thing is, your app is perfectly healthy. The probe failed because its network path was completely cut off.
And this quote here, this is a story I've heard from so many people. They spend days, sometimes weeks, trying to figure out why their perfectly healthy app is just stuck in a crash loop. And it turns out it was the sidecar all along, just blocking the readiness probes. It is an incredibly frustrating problem because it's so hard to spot at first.
The good news is, you can totally catch this before it causes a production fire. You just need to know what to look for in staging. First, stop looking at just your app's logs. You gotta check the Istio proxy container logs too. Next, look at the pod events in Kubernetes. Are you seeing a bunch of readiness probe failures and restarts? That's a huge red flag. And, probably the most important thing, go back and look at your probe configuration. Give it a little more time to start up, a few more chances to fail before Kubernetes gives up on it.
Okay, so we've talked about the resource tax and that nasty startup problem. So, how do we actually do this the right way without breaking everything? Well, I've got a simple 4-step checklist for you. And this is what you do before you even think about enabling injection.
This is it. This is the key takeaway for today. Number 1, do the math. Figure out the resource overhead and make sure your cluster has enough room. Number 2, audit your probes. Go through every single readiness probe and make sure it can handle that initial delay. Number 3, test it. Don't just do this in production. Set up a canary namespace and watch it like a hawk. And finally, number 4, don't do a big bang rollout. Go slow. Do it one service at a time, one namespace at a time. That way, if something does go wrong, you've contained the blast radius.
So, with that one little annotation, you've unlocked all this amazing power for traffic management and observability. It's a huge step. But now that all your traffic is flowing through this proxy, it raises a new question, doesn't it? Is that traffic actually secure? Managing it is one thing, but securing it? Well, that's the next big step on your service mesh journey.